Hey everybody, it's Eric Osuna coming at you from Berkeley, California, talking to you about the intersection of where tech and media meet, motivation, meditation, and manifestation. So today I'm talking to you guys about one of my favorite topics, which is Silicon Valley. So Politico wrote an op-ed, which I'll link down in the comments below, that said, is Silicon Valley becoming the next Detroit? If you're not familiar with what happened with Detroit used to be sort of the epicenter of auto manufacturing and design in the world for a long time. You know, through the 60s, 70s, 80s, Detroit was a powerhouse. It was where, all the sort of the innovation came from. It is where sort of the idea of the automobile kind of took off. And for a large part of the 60s, 70s, 80s, to some extent the 90s, US auto manufacturer really dominated the world market. Silicon Valley since the 60s and 70s has really been the epicenter of technology in the world. And the article in Politico basically says, now that we don't have to pay Bay Area home prices or Bay Area rent prices, but if you can work for Facebook in Fort Collins, Colorado, or if you can work for Apple in Austin, Texas, why be here? It's more expensive to be here. State taxes are high. Real estate is high. Everything's more expensive in California. Everybody knows that. So why stay in California if you can make similar or same amount of money, but pay a third of the price for your home or your rent? Or half. So many people are doing that. That's one part of sort of what's happening to Silicon Valley is a lot of people are moving out. I'll post a couple other articles here talking about how people are moving out of the Bay Area. So to give you a little context, if you're not familiar, which I'm sure you are because I'm sure you've read up and you understand and know, what happened in Detroit is that it became a very insular sort of subculture in corporate America. And, Detroit couldn't do anything wrong. I mean, they were just minting money. And what happened is that really, I want to say, I'm going to give you my perspective because this perspective here is the Latinx perspective. A lot of my perspective comes from the Latinx sort of perspective. So what started happening in I would say, the 90s to 2000s, part of what started happening is that California, as you know, has 50 million people, drives a lot of the economy for the US and the world. California is 40% plus Latino, also a very multicultural state. You name the country, we have a sort of subculture here in California because it is a very multicultural state. And in the 90s, really in the late 80s, 90s, California started to change the design of the car. What was happening is that Japanese cars were being bought in California and then being modified. And this tricked out culture, it drove the industry for a long time. Detroit started to notice. Things really started to change for Detroit when Japanese cars really started getting adopted by Asian and Hispanics in Southern California. That's, to me, what really started to change Detroit. I think what's happening with Silicon Valley in this article in Politico is very appropriate. I think that it's becoming a lot like Detroit because much like Detroit, it's driven by the white male. Whether you're for that or against that or have no thoughts about that or have lots of thoughts about that, that's not something I'm going to discuss here and now. What I am going to say is that it drove Detroit into second and third place and fourth place. I think that part of Silicon Valley's problem right now is that it has also become too insular. It's also very white male. The point that it does make that makes a lot of sense for me is that it's going to speed up the process by which Silicon Valley is going to have to adapt. Now that you can work from anywhere in the world, really, I can be working from Bali. I could be doing this video from Bali right now. I think this is going to test Silicon Valley to see if it's going to stick. Detroit is still where a lot of these headquarters are at. However, the manufacturing is in Mexico. It's in other countries. Oracle has moved out of Silicon Valley. Tesla has moved out of Silicon Valley. Who knows who else is moving next? I know a lot of people are moved out of San Francisco. It's one of the few cities in Silicon Valley where the rents have actually dropped. You know, it's driving demand down. What's it going to do to the makeup? Is it still going to be driven by a white male? Is the technology still going to be driven by that? The funding definitely still is. You know, I've seen Silicon Valley go through a lot of boom and busts. And this is definitely the hardest bust I think I've ever seen. But I don't know what's going to happen. Who knows what's going to happen? I think it's high time Silicon Valley is a little bit more colorful, that it does have more perspectives. And like Detroit, where the Latino and Asian desire for something a little different drove a worldwide change in how people consume cars. So who knows, maybe the Latino, the Asian, the African American is going to really change these tech companies, because right now these tech companies don't represent. I'll give you an example. California, like I said, is 40% Latino or Latinx, and yet like 3% of people that work at Intel, Facebook, Apple are Latino or Latinx. So just to give you a little kind of perspective into what I'm going to be talking about and what I'm bringing to light now, but what I'm going to be talking about more. So subscribe to my channel, and I look forward to talking to you soon. Peace.